I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Ways and Means Committee to go over each department head's budget. And what I'm going to do is, the mayor is actually scheduled first, but running late. The financial director, collector treasurer is here, and I will ask him. What we're going to do, Judge, you want to give a brief summary quickly? Anything new or anything like that, I'd rather you highlight. If not, you can run through it and I'll leave questions to the committee. So you have the floor, Judge.
Great. Okay, as you notice, there's a two different new position in my office that was in January because we're preparing for the 40Us. That's the principal clerk that you see. We put her in because of the fact that when the 40Us come in, we're going to have a clerk that is trained on how to handle them and how to use the system. The others, you'll see that there are increases. There were impact bargaining done in my office. It actually took 2 years to do the impact bargaining. And the assistant collector and the assistant treasurer are receiving an increase because of the additional amount of work they've done. And there were, the amount was agreed on by the union in the city. If you go to the workers' medical, page 82, and then you go to page 83, the workers' compensation, normal. There's nothing different there. Medicare contracted services. The city staff was taken out of my office for the $50,000 put into the mayor's office. There's nothing else different there except the $100,000 computer operations. And the reason for that is I need that money to buy software and hardware, different hardware for the my offices. The audit and accounting services is the same as what was before. Settled tax takings and foreclosures are the same. And if you look at the banking services, the foreign debt transfer, those are actually what's in there. What happened is, if you look at this is the last year that we'll be able to use a lease rental car subsidy because that's the effect of Thrifty Rent-A-Car moving to East Boston and out at the airport and out of the city of Revere. The notes and bond certifications are on an increase because of the amounts authorized for the school and the takings and so on and so forth. So there's an increased amount of bonding and anticipated bonding that's going to happen. The interest on long-term debt, again, you look at that, and that's just what the interest is on the debt. That can be changed. The fixed numbers, transfers, lease, and the rent-a-car subsidy. If you notice again, there's no money in there, and there won't be any money any longer because of Thrifty's move to East Boston. The SRF administrative fees are in there because that's what they will cost, and the transfers out are zero. So you're looking at it. That's quickly my budget. It was done in a fashion that of necessity, and rather than what a wish list. There's all reasons for the minimal increases that are there. The health insurance is, again, if you look at that on page 83, that is what the estimate is. That's only an estimate. So that's basically what we have for a budget. I guess that's the quickest rundown I can give you.
Thank you. I appreciate for that being brief. I mean, this budget here is the first year we got this new budget with all the goals and everything else, and it's basically self-explanatory. I think it makes it easy for the council, and it's actually going to make it easy for each department head because I think questions will be minimal. It's, like I said, it's self-explanatory, and there's not much added to this budget. But what I'll do is I'll open it up to the city council. Anybody have any questions? I basically have one question, George. And the only reason is it's the biggest difference in your budget is the surcharge from Thrifty. Was most of that money or percentage of that money in excise tax or the 10%
Well, the surcharge is 10%. The
Correct, but what, do you know what the difference was of, because they had to register their cars here also,
Right.
and pay excise tax.
Right, the excise tax, the total amount that was lost was about $1,200,000, both the excise tax and the surcharge. I'd say maybe $1,300,000, because the surcharge may have collected 600 to 700,000 a year, and the 6 to 8 was the actually 850,000, what we took out of the budget this year. So we had to meet.
So it's 50-50 then.
A little less than 50, more the excise tax. The excise tax is 850,000.
So more, okay.
So that's, we had to raise that on top of it. So, because of that, and then we had around 600, so it's about $1,400,000, excuse me, wrong, it's about $1,400,000, it's about 600,000 for surcharge.
All right.
So that's what happened, so that's netted out of the budget, it's netted out of the pro forma over our recap sheet that we had to do in order to see what we could with the budget.
I think I get a way of putting a dent to that. We'll discuss that later, not at this meeting, but on surcharges, is I guarantee there's 2,000 to 3,000 cars parked in the city that aren't registered there. So I think if we go after them aggressively, we can make up that money, but that's for another day. But
Mr. Chairman, is that the chairman of the Board of Assessors and myself have been in contact with Thrifty and talking about, to them about some cars that are parked down there and what's going on down there. We'll come to a resolution there and hopefully raise some more revenue by doing that.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Seeing that the mayor's not here, Andy, you want to go next?
Good afternoon. The assessor's budget is, regular routine. I'd like to point out a couple of things that may have changed. As George had mentioned about the impact bargaining, there was one position in the assessor's office that was impact bargained. So there is a salary increase for one of the positions. The other thing I'd like to point out is this is a revaluation year for us, a triennial revaluation. You'll see by the pages you have that in 2012 was the last time we did one, and the cost of that was $150,000. This year we built in a modest 3% increase to about $155,000. And then we added another $30,000 because we've been informed by DOR that they may be looking for appraisals this year of some of the major properties in the city, those being Suffolk Downs, Wonderland, and the oil farms. So in anticipation of having to provide appraisals for those properties, we did get some estimates, and we were told that they would be in the range of $30,000 if we have to do those. And so that's basically the changes in the budget. Any questions?
Okay, any councils on this? I talked to you quite a bit. I really don't have any questions on this. Like you said,
Okay,
it's every 3 years a reval. When is the 10-year reval? Another, how many years?
The 10-year one?
Yeah.
That's in 2 more reval. The next one, yeah. That's the next one. We did one in 08. So it'll be the next triennial.
That'll be the big one. All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome. We'll be around for any
Keep
other
up the good work. You got 2 good guys behind you there, too. Mr. Mayor, you're on.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
I know you were a little late, Mr. Mayor. We did a great job in this budget, by the way. I know you had a lot of help with George and the audit and stuff like that, but it's, like I said before, I'll repeat it again because it's worth repeating, that you made this very simple, very easy to read. No hidden agendas in this thing. It's black and white. And I think that's why, the last 2 department heads up here, there's not many questions because we basically have them in front of us. But anything that basically you have new you want to allude to, that's what we're looking for, a quick summary of your budget.
Okay, just some of the things maybe that are noteworthy. Our labor relations account, once again, we're looking for $45,000. We have worked with a couple different labor attorneys. One of them is Paul Mulkern, who's been a labor attorney here with the city for probably close to 25 years. I have had a new labor attorney join on with us, who is Nick Anastasopoulos from Merrick O'Connell. And these, as you know, last year I had to deal with five or six unions that were out of contract, so that's what that money was used for. The city stat was money that has been in the budget, but it's new to my budget now. It was in the Director of Finance's budget, and we have now moved it over to the mayor's office because, you know, it's not really a finance-related expenditure. It's more of a performance-based function, and so that's the reason we felt it was just more appropriate to bring it back over to the mayor's budget. The home care of $45,000, that obviously goes, that's our share for the Chelsea Revere Winthrop Home Care, Elder Services, and this is in line with past years. We had that reserve for the contract negotiations, which was a result of all the collective bargaining agreements that we ratified last year. And so that came out to almost $3.5 million, which was a big bulk of the increases that we saw in this year's budget. It was, because of a lot of the, salary increases. Most of them negotiated. One of them was arbitrated, but that's where that number falls in line. We have some dues money in there of $35,000 that covers membership fees to the Metro Mayors Coalition, the Mass Municipal Association, U.S. Conference of Mayors, and other meetings that would be required of the mayor's office. And then Northeast Regional Vocational School, which is up about $100,000 from last year, just over $1.5 million. So those really are the major changes in my particular budget this year. But if you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any councilors have any questions for the mayor? We're on page 119, I believe.
Richard,
Good, Councilor Harris.
I have a question pertaining to the mayor's assistant. You went from 6353 to 24803. What is that?
What page you on?
118. The third one down. Did someone get additional hours?
Yes, my administrative assistant got additional hours.
Who's that?
Miles Lane Kennedy.
But that's gone down, though. It's
I-
the third one down.
I think he's talking about the 150 and a half hours.
Well, that's David Krasnoff.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
David?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why, final budget FY14, 6,300. That, yeah, I don't know why that.
That's a typo. Should be,
That
should be 63,000. That's a typo.
Because that's what, yeah, but that's what he's always received, so. Okay.
Mayor, that's a typo. That's 63,000.
He's only part of
You didn't get 15.
He didn't get a raise.
I think it might be 63. If you look at the salary rate, then budgeted, and then you went down and reduced it to the 24. I think there should be 63,000 instead of 6,300.
63,530.
Do you know what I'm saying?
But no, that's a typo. That's what it is.
Correct, it's a typo. That's what I meant, it's a typo.
Krasnoff hasn't received any additional hours. The only person who's received additional hours is Miles, Miles and I.
He's worth it.
Any other councilors? Nobody else? Told you to be brief, Mayor. I think it's because, I mean, basically you got this thing very self-explanatory. I commend you for trying to keep the taxes low as possible, and it was good news on the water rate last night, even though it went up 300, I mean, it's less than 3%. With all this work we've done over the city and the millions of dollars to this consent order we've already paid out, I think should be commended on that. I want to thank you. And the taxpayers, I want to thank you. Council Morabito.
So this typo, when you, this information is created from the database, correct?
Yeah.
So will that typo is not going to reflect the bottom line number, is it? Okay, excellent. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
John Fester, Economic Development Director. John, you know what page you're on to save me a little? 54.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Ways
Yes,
and
John.
Means, as you can see from the budget that we have in front of me, it's really basically 4 items other than a salary component. We have a purchase of service, office supplies, and other expenses. And basically, the allocation of monies for those items, what we're planning on doing, as you're probably aware, we had a Economic Development Summit that was very, very successful. And what we're planning on doing this year, the latter part of October, is we're planning on very aggressively marketing Revere again, focusing our efforts and streamlining our efforts on the commercial component, on the hospitality industry. We're going to have a hospitality summit that we're planning on doing, and with the possibility, if we can do it, also having a retail summit as well. By our past experience with the Economic Development Summit, it was so successful that we had so much demand from developers and interest that now we want to streamline the process and have those particular summits and be more aggressive in those 2 areas. In doing so, we wanted to do it in a first-class fashion in terms of marketing design and programming. Entailed with the 3 components is the possibility of printing of DVDs, promotional efforts, thumb drives, materials, pamphlets, and quite honestly, we're trying to be extremely conservative in our approach and trying to do more things in-house, to be honest, and try to keep this figure as low as we possibly could. And we also are planning on moving forward with a number of different items on the Broadway revitalization project on certain materials there. So it's going to be a combination of things, but we really want to, again, not to be repetitive, but we really want to focus our attention on keep the ball rolling in terms of our marketing efforts and in terms of the hospitality industry. And that's what we're going to be focusing our efforts on very aggressively starting July 1. We're putting a committee together to hopefully by the end of October, we'll set a date sometime in mid-July. That's when we're going to have this, and we, like I said, we want to do it in a first-class fashion like we did the Economic Development Summit. So a lot of the components, the purchase of service, the office supplies, and other expenses would apply to a number of things, not just the summits, but a lot of different areas that we're working on to market the city.
John, thank you. Any councilors? Councilor Janino.
Thank you. I just wanted to commend you on your section of the budget. It really is one of the best put together ones in the book. I think it's great that you highlight all of the huge improvements that we've made in the city and included the business survey that really highlights a lot of the issues and good things that are going on Broadway. So I really want to commend you. We've done some amazing things and I think even more are coming up. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for those comments. I appreciate that.
Just took the words right out of my mouth. Any other councilors? No, John, just one question I have. You asked for a clerk typist, 8,000. You get along with the mayor this month, or what? He cut it. But I mean, now I know why you're working all those extra long hours, because you don't have a clerk typist. But you're doing a great job. Keep it up.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Laurie, City Auditor. Page 91 for... Hi, Laurie.
Hello, how are you tonight? Hi. Can you hear me all right? Yeah.
'94 to '95, basically.
Right, 95 is where the numbers start anyway. Or 94 is the summary, and then 95 is the payroll. So did you want me just to go through all of it? I mean, basically, the only real increase I have this year is the insurance. And that's basically, right now, it's somewhat of an estimate because we don't really ever know what the actual numbers are until it's closer to the end of June. Last year, I requested $690,000 based on estimates provided by the insurance agent at that time. I believe my budget was cut back to $600,000, and the actual number is coming in at somewhere around $665,000, $670,000. When I spoke to the insurance agent this year, they expect there to be somewhere between like a 7 to 8% increase. Again, that's somewhat not certain, so the request I have for that particular line item reflects my conversation with the insurance agent and what the actual numbers came in at this year. So I had requested a financial analyst person in my office because we're taking on more responsibilities with a lot of the building projects that are going on. But for right now, we are managing, so we'll see how that goes. And the other area was, I think that was the only real increase I asked for. And then the rest of it was just based on the union negotiations. I did ask for a little bit of an increase in overtime for my staff from $2,500 to $3,500 because this year we needed that, and I expect that we'll need it again this year as well.
Okay, any
Does anyone have
councils?
any questions?
Council Hess.
Yeah, basically, who do we insure ourselves with? What company?
Marabito Insurance is the insurance agent.
Yeah, okay. He's good.
Okay.
Any relation, Steve?
Any relationship?
Yeah. Any other councilors?
Marabito, okay.
Laurie, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Solicitor, Paul.
Too much crap.
132. Got the floor, Paul.
What do you want to know? My budget's not that complicated. Few items, few line items. How can I serve you?
Well, how about one change you have, the 40U hearings officer? When is that going to come to fruition?
That's still under construction. We've got still a lot of phases to that to complete. We've got a draft of the new ordinance. There's a group of us in City Hall working with the software folks to devise the new system by which the inspectional services employers will assign tickets and collect, but that's, that's a good question. No, George has been working on this with me, so we've been having a number of meetings, I would say.
I don't want to interrupt my colleague's hearing, but the 40U is expected to implementation date mid-July. So
Mid-July.
we're trying to implement it in mid-July. We're in the process of finalizing the software because the software had to be designed from scratch because there was no software that did a complete job. And one of the things I want to point out is there was a inspection services forum in Worcester, and the people from the inspection services went, and what they saw there was nothing anywhere close to what we're getting and what we've developed. It's not as automated. So it took some time, but we're getting it there.
Judge, just correct me if I'm wrong. This is, in other words, right now, if inspection service go and write a ticket,
Right.
some of it may go to Chelsea Court,
Right.
and they get most of the money. We're going to have our own hearings officer here at City Hall,
That's correct.
and we will get all that money. So this is basically, I mean, it's a win-win moneymaker. So I think, it's not it's something that, we should fund. It's just, I'm just surprised that's all it is, because you're probably not expecting it to be the whole year. Is that correct?
2 days a month.
Okay, so, 2
So
days.
that's all that is. So he's not there all the time person.
But I mean, it will be a moneymaker for the city. So I mean, I think it's something, long overdue. But you're pretty sure we're gonna
We're
get.
looking at mid-July for implementation. That means not only actually going to roll out, but implementation, we're going to have to check the program and make sure it's free of glitches, and then once you can get it rolling, it'll be out there working. So it's a major coup for us to get it, because again, there wasn't a software out there that handled this as well. Other cities and towns do have software, but there's a lot of automation in this. Every 30 days, after a certain period of time, a unpaid ticket becomes a lien, whereas on the 21Ds, they didn't become a lien. So what happens now is that they lien directly to the collector's office after a certain period of time. So, and after a notice. So what happens then, it goes right into the tax bill.
No, I mean, it's
Unlike the others, it doesn't take us long, and we can lien under the tax bill, and then eventually if it goes on their lien, when we do the turnover, then we can actually foreclose on the property because of the fact that they haven't paid these liens. So this is a very serious business, and people who don't pay their.
I think it's a great thing, and we'll have a handle on it rather than Chelsea Court.
You'll know ahead of time because
Yeah.
we have to get the ordinance changed to adopt all these 40U provisions, and it's going to come to you guys first before any of this goes forward.
Any council has?
As far as the, under judgments, $1.8 million,
Yeah.
why hasn't the mayor put anything in 2015?
Well, and George is here to correct me if I'm wrong. That particular budget is, funds are never allocated to it because you never know what you're going to pay out in judgments. It's
But
sort of-
didn't we get a judgment against us?
We did get a judgment against us, a huge well, it was, yes, a huge judgment that we put out to bond to pay for it. But we had no idea that that was ever going to come to us or ever go to judgment.
Right.
So this budget, this particular budget, I guess is treated like environmental. You don't know how much snow you're going to get, you don't know how often you're going to get sued or if and when you're going to get sued.
Right, but the amount that the judgment against the city, we know what that was, correct?
Well, if you take that it was 1.75
Right.
was that one particular case. The
Okay.
rest of it is a variety of other cases.
Right.
In the cumulative, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Regal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up on Councilor Hatz's question, do we know what exposure we might have in terms of lawsuits? Do we have anything outstanding now, or any big settlements that are hanging kind of over our head? Because I know there were a couple that we knew about, and I'm just wondering if there's anything.
We have two lawsuits right now that might have some value should the plaintiff succeed, but nothing of this magnitude. by statute at $100,000 for that. So generally, these are rare. This was a civil rights lawsuit, which has no statutory cap to it. And these are few and far between.
Okay.
At least I'd like them to be.
So I guess follow up on that to Director Anzoni, would we be using reserves for that to pay for that, or, you know?
As far as an execution is concerned, what happens is that what we do is one of the accounts that you can legally overspend is the execution account. The other one is the bonded debt interest and principal, and the other two. The idea is that we don't know what the exposure is to put something in the budget. We could guess at that, and it could be we just plug a figure. So rather than doing that, we have a figure, and if we have to expend amount of money, any available funds at the end of the year is what we'll use to try to cover whatever the exposure was. The other part of it, too, we also can put it on the recap sheet next year. So we have one of those two ways to do it.
Okay, so we would essentially use free cash if we have it at the end of the year to cover any debt.
We can use free cash or any available funds that we have unexpended funds.
Okay, and do we have a projection for how much free cash we might have?
Next year? No.
Next year?
No, I haven't. No. I'm not going to guess that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other councils? Paul, I just have one.
Sure.
I mean, basically, settlements out of your office. With all these potholes we've had, have we had a lot of damaged cars? I know several people that called me on it, so.
Yeah, I'm sure we're now beyond whatever was allowed last year, which I think was 10 grand. You can see we're already over 14. And I'm guessing it's probably a little bit higher. I think this number, according to the auditor, was at least through May. I've got a bunch of them still on my desk to contend with. We do the best we can to be as fair as we can with everybody, but this year there was an exceptional amount of pothole claims, which I know you've all heard about it. So it's affected us too. I'm never going to refuse more money in that account. I can always put it to good use. These are our citizens. These are the ones who bring the claims. But I do the best to defend. And take
you already need more money in this.
Yes, or we could just fill out the potholes sooner, and maybe that would.
I'm all with you. I think every council up here is all with you with that. But thank you. Any other councils? I'm standing here and none. Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Glenn, MIS Director. 103.
Good evening.
Doesn't look like there's much there, but you can go through and give us all the great stuff you're doing and where we're at with the all the different department heads hooked up and all that stuff. So.
Well, primarily this is going to be a level-funded year. There's no capital outlay projects planned at this point. The increase is basically due to any increase in contracts that we had for software or hardware maintenance.
I guess there's not much there. Council has. What's that? I agree with you. Any other councils? Councilor Regal.
One question, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's more, I guess, programmatic, but I get a lot of, I have a city email address, I get a lot of the emails that Munis is down kind of constantly. Is that, I mean, I've worked in other communities and that wasn't the case as many times, and I just wonder if there are upgrades or if there are things that we need to do to our IT infrastructure that would help that from happening. Because it seems more frequent than I've noticed in other places. So
Our hardware is 7 years old at this point in time. It's due to be refreshed, but until we can find a funding source for it, it's not going to happen.
I mean, is it something just that we know about, that we know is an issue, or is it something that other communities kind of see, or is it Munis? Is it Munis as a whole? Because I know there are pros and cons in the Munis system. I think there are some people who despise it, and then there are some people who like it a lot. but it just seems like there are a lot of outages and maybe a lot of problems, technical issues that come up, and I just wonder if we could do anything to lessen those.
We can upgrade the server, and that's welcome. Actually, we need to upgrade the server within the next 2 years because their migration process, they phase out the existing level that we're on will be phased out in 2 years. They won't support it any longer. And the new hardware that we would have to get new hardware for the next version for the installation. So it is something that will have to be addressed within the next 2 years.
Yeah, and I guess maybe this might be to Director Anzoni. Do we have a capital improvement plan for the entire city? I think the mayor mentioned something at some point, putting together a kind of comprehensive capital plan, and will that include IT infrastructure?
We have and we're in the process, the City Stat team, of getting a capital improvement plan together citywide. The technology portion definitely will be a part of that, but that's going to take a while to get that together, so take a year or two to get it together, so that's what we're looking at. I am in agreement with Glenn because the last upgrade that was done on the IT infrastructure was 7 years ago, which we're both heavily part of, and naturally the servers are getting older and the equipment's getting older, and the idea is, every 4 or 5 years we should turn the stuff over, but we seem to be getting a little extra, mileage out of it, but we also run into a lot of problems because it's getting that, stretching it past that is due time. So that's one of the problems that we're running into now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Morabito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just curious if you know what will the cost be for an upgrade on the server and also for new hardware for the next version? What are we looking at?
Approximately $25,000, but I can't say for sure until we actually start pricing out hardware.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Next, retirement board. I'm sorry, we did that already. Yep, the mayor was late, so. Purchasing agent, where are you? Huh? Yeah, I got it.
Mr.
That's
Chairman,
106. Councilor Rigo.
Mr. Chairman, before I guess we're going to be wrapping up soon. I did have a couple of questions about the mayor's budget and Director of Finance's budget. I was wondering if we could circle back, or maybe I could just kind of ask you if some of the questions were already addressed. But
well, I mean, the finance director's still here, so.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I have no problem.
Yeah.
We'll take care of Marie and then we'll go back
Sounds
to George.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Hi. The budget's basically the same. I asked for a little bit more in postage. I've asked for a little bit more in postage because the postage has gone up, and I expect that it will go up more next year.
Yeah, I can see there's not much here. Any councils on this? Councilor Morabito.
With the postage, do we have bulk mailing, first class, or?
We do anything that we can. We cannot bulk. We can do first class pre-sort. Our election department can do bulk. Basically, because bulk, you cannot guarantee when it's going to be there, and as a municipality, you need to guarantee that they're going to get there. The post office doesn't actually have to deliver bulk mail. They can take 2 weeks, a month, and deliver it. So we don't do that. But anything that's 500 pieces or more within the city goes out at a discounted rate.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I just have one question, and it's not even pertaining to the budget while you're here. When you send bids out, Chapter 90 money for roads and streets, who sets the criteria on that? Start date, finish date? I mean, not you, it's a community development that does that?
Yes.
Yeah, I think, just maybe give them the heads up. I actually went up there, and I'll tell you why. There's a project being done actually on my street. They worked there all week. They're doing a great job. But now they got some of the curbstones halfway down the street out. And I knew the answer before you went and asked it. Oh, they're up on Washington Ave now. Well, that shouldn't be our problem as residents and taxpayers of the city that they go to 2, 3 jobs. Because what they do is they take on more work than they can handle, and so they have it without the year. That should not be our issue. So I think from now on, when I'll talk to Frank Stringy and the Community Development Office, that they should put something in there, start date, finish date. I mean, it's totally unsafe, and it's been like that a week. It's not you, I'm just curious if from now on, if you look at that and say, geez, you may want to put something in there.
It can be put in there.
Yeah, I mean, it should be put in there. I mean, we shouldn't pay for them going to 4 different areas of the city at the same time. Monday here, Wednesday here, Thursday here. It's just, and leaving a condition unsafe. I mean, it was a pet peeve of mine. I had to get off my chest, which I did earlier, but I talked to him last year about this, and it still happened. But thank you for coming. And now George will be back up. Councilor Rigo, do you want to start in the mayor's section first? And if he can answer, he will. If not, I can have the mayor come up next couple nights or whatever again, or if George can answer, whatever.
Yeah, I think if George can answer it, that'll be great. So I'll start off with. It looks like in the 2014 budget column, the adopted budget, and I'm looking on from 14 to page 16, which is the summary. The previous year appropriation is off by about almost $400,000 from what was actually passed last year. And it looks like the difference ends up being in the mayor's office and in community development. And I wanted to understand, because I just checked against 14, what we had passed last year compared to what was in this budget. And it looks like there's a little discrepancy, and I just wanted to be able to pin that down.
What page you on, Council?
So I'm on page 14.
Right.
Okay. The previous year's appropriation for the mayor is $2,307,611.
Right.
What we passed last year was $1,970,343. There's a discrepancy of about $337,000. I was wondering kind of where that comes from.
Why that was, you're saying that with the additional 333,000? Oh, we didn't have any transfers into that. Come over here, we'll look at it. This one here, on the mayor's office, the total amount was $307,611. He's saying it was $1,009,000. So there's a $333,000 difference between exactly what was appropriated and what was.
Well, I think he's right, though. I think what happened was some of the line items got moved from the director of finance to the mayor's office or vice versa. And I could get you that, and I could break it down for you and show you exactly what it was.
Yeah, I just saw it because I wanted to make sure that, I mean, part of our job is checking math, and I wanted to make sure that what you had for previous year's appropriations matched up to what I had and what we figured.
Is that
And
previous year appropriation number? Because I double checked it.
yeah, it's what we.
It would be a combination of that, what the book was,
Right.
and any cuts that would have been made or increases that would have been made, and any additional council orders that are made during the year.
Okay.
So this would reflect through May any changes. So it's more of like the adopted budget through that period of time, so you can see what really happened during the year.
Yeah. So then I guess my question is, what was that 300,000 for? Okay.
I'll send you an email on that.
Okay, that'd be great.
Thank you.
And then on the mayor's budget, I'm looking on page, 118. I think this may have been discussed a little bit, but it sounds like, I don't know if we got to the right answer. The mayor's administrative assistant, the 15-hour position, The salary rate is $63,000. The final budget was for 14 was 6,300. So that is a raise. Is that correct, or
No,
it sounds like?
No, that was a typo. We decided that's a typo on that.
Okay, but if you add up the salaries, you get to 365,200, and that's what we passed last year. That is the salary number from last year, is
I know
that 365,000.
What
So,
happened last year, here's what happened last year. Last year, as we stated, that the Mayor's Administrative Assistant, Miles Lane Kennedy, got a increase of hours. And we were taking both salaries out of the one administrative assistant before that point. Once the raise occurred, then we had to then put another administrative assistant position in, and that's the amount that we're putting it in, because now we couldn't make it under that one budgeted figure. So that's occurring.
So
that doesn't
is
make
this-
sense that what you passed.
So is this one person that's making $32 an hour?
Which one are you talking about?
The administrative assistant that's 15 hours.
Yes, that's one person making.
Okay, and but that person last year made $8 an hour.
No, that person last year made the same amount of money each year. They got a raise in hours per hourly rate. That's the hourly rate that it would be for $63,000 a year.
Okay. Okay, so and then to follow up on the executive secretary, sorry, it says there's a note here about the union impact bargaining request. Is that a union employee?
No, she's not a union employee. What happened was is that she took on additional duties, and she went to the mayor, and it wasn't a union impact bargaining on that. It's that she took on the additional duties, and she got an increase for those additional duties she took on.
Okay. What was the average increase for from our union impact, like union bargaining?
Impact bargaining, it depends. It depends on what the position was. The collector treasurer's assistants was $5,000 because they took on additional functions, and that's what was agreed on between the union and the city. The assessor, the assessor manager was actually in the wrong union, and he was under an incorrect amount of pay. So what happened was the union came to the city and asked, what do we do about this? What can we do about this? We negotiated what his job duties were, and he got $8,500. The mayor's
What's the percentage?
percentage of what he was getting before, I'd say it's about 8 to 9%.
Okay. All right. And this is an 11.5% raise. It seemed like a little bit more than, I know we had given 2s and 3s out to some of the unions, so
Right.
11.5% seemed like it might have been a little bit more than.
The unions, we had given that amount of money to them because of the fact that was in general. The ones that took on additional duties were the ones that come in for impact bargaining, just by the nature of impact bargaining, and they have to prove to us that they did take on additional duties. I'm aware of the people that do take on additional duties, and it's actually for the those 3 people that I mentioned, it's been a 2-year process to actually get them to this amount. So they've been doing the duties for over 2 years. However, we weren't able to reach an agreement until this budget.
Okay. And then finally, on the mayor's budget, on page 119, under object number 529000, I understand 2 of these items. I know the 1.5 is the 1.5 from the rainy day fund that we had agreed upon last budget. And I believe that the 1.65 is from the police and fire contracts.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And then, so the 337, and I think this is where the gap might be between what was appropriated last year and what you have appropriated last year. It says council order 13-149, but I don't remember there being an additional rainy day agreement or a rainy day expenditure, or if there was any additional, that 337,000 additionally in last year's budget. So
Okay, I can't remember exactly what that council order was. It looks like it was a...
that was the budget. So the council order 13-149 is the budget, and that's
Right.
What I have. But I just don't know where that 337 came from. If it came from additional reserves or what was the nexus or where that money came from, basically, and what it went to. I assume it may have gone to raises. I think that all this money went to raises.
Those three numbers either went to raises or went to fund the budget itself.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr.
I will actually look that up and I'll get back.
I would appreciate that.
I'll send the Ways and Means Committee a note.
Thank you.
All three of those are contractual agreements, correct?
All three of those contractual agreements.
Those amounts? Because of negotiation with raises,
Negotiations,
some people had retroactive too, so.
But well, two of those are rainy day, were rainy day expenditures. One of them, I don't know, and then that's what I'm asking is, where did that 337,000 come from? Did it come from our stabilization account like the other two, or did it come from somewhere else within the budget?
I think council could, I mean, it could be the 300 that Laurie's going to find out that information.
Oh, yes, okay. That was the school department supplemental budget because of the fact we had to meet their minimum spending, and that's why we had to increase the amount by 337,000.
But I think, Councilor Rego, just edification, you're basically asking where the funding came from, correct?
Right.
All right.
That's the question he really wants to know, not what it went for, where appropriation came from.
Okay, this will give it. All right. Actually, that was a supplemental appropriation.
Okay.
Okay? It wasn't from the rainy day fund, it was a supplemental appropriation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I would think it would be. I mean, if you look at it, the council order is the same number, so it would
I know the only...
probably two different funded sources, it looks to me.
The $1,000,005 to balance the budget, the $1,650 for the raise. Yes, Laurie.
Did-
It was an increased appropriation. Yeah. Yeah, it was an increased appropriation, that's what it was.
Councilor Gino? Brian, you're off the mayor, and you want to go to the next?
I just want to ask a couple of general questions to the
Okay.
finance director. Just so we can kind of be clear, how much is in the rainy day or the stabilization account today after the transfer that we made last night?
Okay. How much is it, Laurie? Well, we took the appropriation last night out of the free cash. All right. All right, here's the numbers I have here. Just let me tell you here. We had a balance as of 6/30/2013 of $5,514,000 in the stabilization fund. We used 3.150, which are the two numbers you saw in that budget. Then we had an additional amount appropriated to of $3,292,000 as far as the free cash certification this year. Expected projected balance is $5,657,000. Now, are you asking? You did the free cash, and you're calling the stabilization fund the rainy day fund? Or you calling, because both of them are rainy day funds, free cash.
Right.
Stabilization fund.
What
you did is you did a transfer between the free cash and the stabilization fund last year.
And the free cash that we had, the 3.9 in free cash, 2.5 of that is going to be used to balance the budget. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So we took out 3. We're going to put back in 1.4.
You took out 3 out of where?
Yeah, 3.1.
We take everything
So we started with 5 million.
Right.
Right? We took out 3.15 for last year's budget.
Right.
We're going to add in
3.2.
an additional, no, well, we're using 2.5 of that 3.9. So we're going to add in 1.4.
1.4. Right.
Okay.
Brian, if I can just interrupt for one
Yeah.
second.
That's not-
George, if we're meeting tomorrow night, we're meeting the next night, we're meeting Monday. Could you get forward to the clerk a breakdown of what we have in the rainy day fund, stabilization fund, as of the date today?
Yeah.
Right.
In other words, I mean, this way here, I think all those answers will be answered, basically. You want to know what we have exactly today.
Right.
So you can do the math and forward it to the clerk, and we can have the information hopefully by tomorrow.
I actually ran these numbers last night, and I have a different path. But it asked me last night what I had. I know the water stabilization fund, what we asked and what we transferred, would end up somewhere in the area of 900 and some odd thousand, maybe 920,000. Now, let me just think back, let's see the numbers on that pad. And the estimate is what we use is 2.5, and
George, to make it easier on you, I think maybe we get the exact numbers. It might be easier to forward to.
Yeah, I would agree, Mr. Chairman. I think,
2.6
I
was
thi-
the number last night.
yeah, and I think just going forward, and I think this is now my 3rd budget on the council. Going forward, it'd be helpful, maybe, I know that there have been a couple of tweaks to the budget, and there's been a big overhaul this year, but going forward, I think it'd be helpful to see this information up front. So when we get information, when we get a lot of information about expenditures, we get a lot of information about goals and objectives and accomplishments. What we lack, I think, is a little bit more information about fund balances and exactly where we are with the stabilization account, but also in terms of revenue and our projections for revenue. I know, Mr. Director, I do want to thank you for giving me information that I had requested, but I do think that we just need to get a little bit tighter in terms of being able to show revenue and clearly and in a transparent manner look at what is coming in and then what's going out and where we're going to be, in the next few years. Because from my perspective, if we continue to use free cash, rainy day money, reserves in general, is not a long-term way to budget, and it's really not, I think, the sign of a healthy community. We have a lot of other signs that show that we're healthy, but this is one, and the bond rating agencies have talked about it in their reports. They've talked about our use of reserves. If we can get ourselves off of that, or, and it's been mentioned that people do use reserves and that other communities use reserves, but they're also adding to their reserves at the same time. And they have a minimum amount. I mean, the City of Malden is thrown around a lot, but the City of Malden also has an ordinance that says that the city has to hold 7.5% of their operating budget in reserve. And if we did that, we would have $12 million. $12 million in reserves. We have around a little more than 3 now. So that's a third of maybe where we should be, or where other communities that we've compared ourselves to should be. So, I don't want to get into the whole, you can get into very nuance of municipal finance, and I know it's not very much fun, and none of us want to sit through that. But an indicator of a healthy community is a healthy reserve, and I know you know that, Mr. Director, and I know you understand that. But I can't hammer that home enough. Is that these other communities that we talk about do have other ordinances in place, and they do have other measures that they have a healthy stabilization account. And at the end of the day, I understand in a couple months, if we have a casino, this is going to be the furthest thing, nobody's going to care about revenue because we're going to have so much that we can paint the ceilings gold, you know, but.
Don't say that too much. That's too loud.
But, and we do have to be careful. I think if the casino does happen and it ends up coming, there's going to be a lot of money coming our way, and we have to be thinking about how to not only get the services that we know that we'll be able to afford, but how do we sustain a long-term financial plan that includes a healthy amount of reserves. I appreciate the leeway, Mr. Chairman. I don't mean to go off on my soapbox about the rainy day account, but I think going forward it would be good to have that information, and maybe we can incorporate it into the budget year to year, and I think it's helpful to see. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Council, I don't have a problem with everybody voicing their own opinion. I have my own. The problem is 1 and 1 is 2, and if you spent $7 million, we had in reserve more, somebody paid for that. The senior citizen that couldn't afford it, that we gave a break to, so it's a balancing act. I don't think, if we're perfect world, we wouldn't spend it at all, but sometimes you have to. And I agree with you, the city would be better off if we had it there, but we may have 5 police officers less the last 3 years. You might have, I mean, it's a balancing act. I mean, and we appropriate that money, so the mayor comes up here and suggests to appropriate, and we appropriate it because, yes, we're all sensitive to the taxpayer and the water rate pay and everything else. And, you know, I mean, Judge, you can add to that, Judge. I'm just saying everybody has a different opinion of where the money should come from. But if it didn't, if you had $7 million in the account, where would it came from? Right. So you can do all the speculating you want, but it's going to come from somewhere.
Here's the thing, and this is, all of us are in agreement with this, I'm sure. A sign of a healthy community and the looking at Standard & Poor's and Moody's is a stabilization fund. It wasn't until a few years ago that we had a stabilization fund, and that was a problem. When we have an ordinance now that 15% goes into the stabilization from free cash and sale of land, we've been able to build it up. Unfortunately, we have. Unfortunately, over the years, we've been able to pick up some very good free cash, and that's been helpful. However, when we sit down as a budget committee, we have to look at, okay, we can make these cuts. And as you know, we want to provide services to the community. We didn't set this budget based on the outlook that there's a casino coming. We based this budget on what we had available, and as if no casino was coming. And we are using a amount of stabilization funds. And what will happen is, at some point, hopefully, the building new growth in the city will come up high enough so that the new taxes that are received without the casinos will fund more of the budget than the actual the stabilization fund is. So that's what we're looking at. We're trying to get it to a point where it's reasonable. We're trying to get it to the point, we were faced with, one of the killers was the $2 million that we had got implanted in our budget by the raises that were given to the police and fire. There was, I think, $900,000 on the fire side and 1.1, somewhere in that, on the police side that we had to put into the budget. One of those decisions was made by the JLMC. So the city had to agree to pay to that, in which we did, and fine, we had to absorb that into the budget. So that was a kicker. It's not that we went out and when this administration came in, every union was out. Every union had to be negotiated with. It was a long process. We got it done. This administration got it done, and we were faced with that amount. I mean, the firemen were out since, I think, 2010, and we had to make adjustments for that. And, all negotiations were friendly, but at the same time, it had to be realized that this was going to hit the budget, and it did. In the meantime, what also hit the budget was the $850,000 loss from the thrifty rent-a-car excise tax, and that had to be moved out of the budget. And then on top of that, the surcharge had to be taken out of the budget. So, you're looking at quite a bit of money that we had to look at. Now, the state also gave us a minimal amount of money. I think they gave us $200,000 additional local aid to general fund. And I believe the don't quote me on this, but I believe the assessment was somewhere in around 137,000 increase. So, I mean, you're only netting out somewhere in the $60,000, $70,000 worth of additional state aid. So, another problem we had to face. But if you look at the amount of cuts you would have to make if you didn't use the stabilization fund, if everybody here had their preference, I don't think anybody would use the stabilization fund. I don't think anybody in the administration would, especially the finance officers, wouldn't use the stabilization fund. It's not one of our first recommendations, but, you know, those are the things we're hit with. And I understand your point, and I do understand your point, Counselor, and we want to grow the stabilization fund. I think that over the years, the way the stabilization fund grew is, one, with the amount of free cash we had, we put it in place, the lack of use of it, and it has been used in past years to fund the budget. But, you know, it's just the way the economy was. It's the way what we're faced with to make decisions. And I think we're making responsible decisions to this point. Hopefully we don't have to run into the stabilization fund any longer, but if we do have an amount there. I don't know what the stabilization fund amount is going to be, or the free cash amount is going to be for next year. I can't guesstimate it at this point, but...
George, and I guess to that point, two things come to mind. Number one, we have, so with the free cash, we have the amount is around $3.9 million. Right. We moved 15% of that, I believe, last night, automatically. We're going to use $2.5 million of that for this budget. Is the rest of that free cash going to go into stabilization account, or will it go toward? Might we need it for the budget going forward through this year?
Not foreseeing anything that we feel that the rest of the free cash may go into the stabilization fund because it has to. If not, we lose it and we can't use it this year. And that's what we're looking to do. Or if something comes up, whereas we're looking for certain areas to come up with grants, depending on how those grants come out, we don't know what we're going to have to use with that. But as far as we can see right now, what we are looking at is the $2.5 million that we're using for out of the free cash. So the confusion may be, and I don't know, it is a confusion, but we're calling one a rainy day fund and one we're calling free cash. Free cash and stabilization pretty much are the same type of accounts. The total we have in there is probably the largest we've ever had. It projected it would, if we don't use the money, it's projected at 5.6. So that's what we have in there now with the transfer, because the transfers last night we're talking 400,000 and maybe whatever it was the water and sewer fund. But that 400,000 is still in the rainy day fund. It went from free cash to stabilization.
Right.
So that's what's happened to it. So it's not like it disappeared and we appropriated it to something else. So looking at it, as far as the stabilization fund or the rainy day fund, as you want to call it, it's still a healthy, at the remaining, I believe, it's still more than it was in 2000, let me tell you, 2012. The end of 2012.
And that was that after the $2 million that was left by Mayor Messino? So I think, and that was, there were $2 million that was left as he left office, I believe, and
he left about 2.2 million, somewhere around that area, 2.5, and that's more than that amount. So you still have more than that amount. You're going to end up with about 3.2 million, 3.3.
And one more.
And that's no criticism to anybody. I'm just saying, there was an amount in there, and, you know, it's still more than that amount. We didn't go below that amount, so we're doing, we're trying to hold our head above the water right now.
Right.
Okay.
And one other point, I guess, is that, a couple of weeks ago we had, I believe it was Mr. either Powers or Sullivan, I'm not sure which one it was, but Mr. Powers, okay, from Powers and Sullivan come, and he had talked a little bit about unfunded liability and OPEB.
OPEB, right.
I know we don't have any appropriation for that now, but again, I guess thinking about the city in hopefully a couple months or next year, that a city that's flush with cash, I would hope that that's on our radar to be able to start to fund that, to kind of get that unfunded liability to a manageable place. Again, that's, in my eyes, you know, we talked a little bit about signs of a healthy community, but I think the communities that are putting money towards the unfunded liability are the wealthier communities, and they have the money to do it. And that, you know, that we're not one of those communities yet. But in the event that we do have a change soon, we may be flush with cash, and I hope this is something, because it's not and this is my concern, is that much like the water and sewer system, and we're seeing what happens when we don't pay for it, we get hit with a big consent decree. Right. Much like that, unfunded liability is something that is not sexy. It's not going to get somebody reelected, or it's not going to get somebody elected, and nobody wants to talk about it. But we're looking at maybe $300 or $400 million, in 40 years, and it's going to make the $100 million consent decree look like a peanut. So, if it's one of those things where we should be thinking about it, we should be talking about it, and having a healthy stabilization account helps pay for things like that. And I think the state of California actually they have a ballot question that 10% of their revenue be automatically directed to stabilization account. Which is aggressive, and I'm not suggesting that we do this tomorrow, but I think when we are flush with cash, hopefully, we can start thinking about that. We can start thinking about things that are on the radar, or should be on the radar, that could have a significant financial impact.
Well, one of the things we've done during the negotiations with the casino, and the team has, with the mayor, is we've discussed these options. We look at exactly, where are our liabilities, where will our liabilities be, what is the revenue we're coming in. I mean, the revenue stream, if you look at that agreement, it is one of the richest in Massachusetts.
George, if I could just stop you there. Well, the council even said himself, and I think we all said it. And like I said, and I'm praying, we're all praying, that's somewhere down the road. If it happens, we can talk about it. You know something? We're gonna have a great time in Revere and the ratepayers, taxpayers. But what I'm saying is, you said it yourself, and I'm a firm believer of it. We gotta act like it's not coming. If it comes, all the better. But we have to go forward as it's not coming. Because if it doesn't come, and we planned it was coming, and you just might offset that, then we're really in trouble. So I think that day is coming. I understand it's the best agreement in the country. That's been said, and everything else. You did a great job. But I'm just saying. But I'm just saying, I just want to finish this quickly. You can finish it, but I'll be very quick about. But I hope you don't use it in the analysis that we're putting emphasis on it. That we already have it. Okay. I just want to say these discussions have taken place, and I agree with the council. These discussions should take place, and maybe further they should take place even from the city council. But they already have been taking place, and that there are they're not finalized plans, but there are ideas of where some of the money can be used. And those are the things we've looked at. And I'm agreeing with the council on that. The council has.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. George, free cash is technically used for one-time expenditures, correct?
That's correct. They advise you for one-time expenditures.
Oh, right. Now, as far as stabilization funds, we have a ordinance that puts so much into that account, right?
We have two ordinances.
Right. Now, if during the course of the year you're establishing the budget, and you do not use free cash or stabilization funds, as we discussed earlier, what offsets would that require to make up the difference?
So you don't use free cash to, so are you saying?
If we don't use any of those funds, and we keep them in the account.
Okay, we keep them in the account, you'll have that money in the account, but you'll have a $2.5 million shortage to meet the budget. So you're going to have to pay $2.5 million cuts.
In cuts. No further comment.
I mean, cuts, yeah.
With that being said, I just want to recognize I did before, Councilor Regal being on the committee, Councilor Granasso, Councilor Marabito, Councilor Pass, myself, and Councilor Gino. I want to thank her and Councilor Hatch for coming, and Councilor Reardon's been very quiet over there quite a while. I want to thank him for coming also, but anybody else have any questions before we wrap up here? That's going to do it for tonight's meeting, and we'll be back here tomorrow at 5 o'clock. And Judge, if you could, just get something together with the free cash rating, put it all in one thing and we can get that. I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, you can give it to the city clerk and Ash will get it to us.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.